Current Hornets, future Hornets, forever Hornets. Welcome back to another episode of What's the Buzz. I'm your host, Jared, and we have a special guest on the set today, Center for Civic Engagement's Associate Director, Marquise Griffin. Marquise, welcome to the spot.
Good to be here, and it's good to be back at K. So,
I know that's right, man.
Thanks for having me.
I think we were just kind of talking. We've only had one guest so far that hasn't been an alum, and I think that says a lot about, Kalamazoo College in itself and the type of place that it is for people to want to come back just to get started. Let's talk about your background. Where you from, how you ended up at K, the journey that you took post-graduation, and how you ended up back here serving in the Center for Civic Engagement.
So I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I found my way here at K because I went to a really small high school. I think there was about maybe a total of 850 of us in the total high school population. K being small, the individualized K plan, all of that drew me in. And so I came here, ended up deciding to be an English major, and I got involved with quite a few organizations and departments on campus, and one of them being the Center for Civic Engagement. I actually got involved because the current director, Sashay, she was a civic engagement scholar, and she recruited me to be part of one of the programs called CAPS, Community Advocates for Parents and Students. And so CAPS is predominantly like a tutoring program. I think, honestly, that was probably my first real step into community engagement work. I mean, especially as a college student, because I did some volunteer stuff as a high school student, but as a college student, I think being involved with CAPS was my first step into civic engagement. After I left K, I went into a master's program at the University of Missouri, did a master's in educational leadership and policy analysis. My main emphasis and focus area was on student belonging, college access, college equity, student belonging. I was particularly interested in how first-gen BIPOC students find a sense of belonging.
For sure.
When I did a second master's in Boston, and I did that master's in English, and the big reason was for me to figure out, did I really want to do a PhD? What kind of field did I want to do it in? And I wanted to be more prepared. And so then after I finished my master's in Boston, I reapplied to PhD programs, got in. My top choice was at the University of Michigan. So I'm now doing joint PhD in English and education. I'm in my fourth year. And a lot of what I'm studying now, it goes beyond just how do we have a sense of belonging. And now I'm really diving more into things like racialized trauma, trauma and healing, and how trauma and healing both occur in community, but then also occur in the body. There are different kinds of somatic things that we experience that are a result of trauma. And so then those are the things that we have to address in order to heal. And I saw that the posting was open for the associate director position at the CCE. And I felt like it was a good fit. I was just like, this is giving me the chance to really practice all the different things that I've been studying and really put in action my various experiences around community engagement.
Can you talk about, that introduction to the CCE, the Center for Civic Engagement, while you were a student here, and essentially why you did decide to lean into CAPS?
I think what drew me in, and I keep reminiscing about this moment because I think I was a little skeptical at first.
For sure.
Wasn't really sure if I had the time to commit to it, and I think I started realizing early on that to do this kind of work is to be involved on a personal level that oftentimes can be very straining. When you're doing this kind of work, there's a lot of emotional labor involved.
Absolutely.
And especially to see people going through things that, you yourself have gone through, that can also be very difficult, to say the least. But I remember this moment that I was helping a little black boy. I think I was helping him with his reading homework or something. And, we were just kind of going through it, just kind of this back and forth. I had kind of convinced him hey, this is worth doing. But we kept at it, and by the end of it, he was like, you know what? Okay, I can see myself doing this. And that was like a moment that really stuck with me because I was like, okay, this can be really impactful, to really convince this kid that education and investing in his education is something that he wants to do. That is something that's worthwhile. And continuing to have moments like that throughout being in CAPS. And then when I did my community building internship with Loaves and Fishes, those are the things that I think stayed with me the most. But especially while I was with Loaves and Fishes, what really impacted me was that, so that same summer was like towards the end of that summer, that's when Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson. And I mean, being from St. Louis, Ferguson was very close to me. My father lived in Ferguson, so I spent a lot of time there growing up. Watching Ferguson happen, from afar, I felt this deep. It's more than desire. It was like it felt like a deep burning calling. Really, like I had to do something. Like I needed to be involved.
For sure.
And I mean, Ferguson really was just the tip of the iceberg. And then, of course, again, now to be studying trauma and healing as a part of my PhD program, it all comes from that. Especially when you talk about the kind of violence that is done against Black communities and other BIPOC communities, other communities of color, and how that trauma is historical, it's generational, and it's collective. But then again, bringing it back to the ways that we also experience that trauma within our bodies. And I had to really come to the realization of how I was impacted by that trauma and deal with that trauma. And so, to go back to what I was saying earlier about when you're doing community engagement, it can be very emotionally laborious and it can be difficult because especially if you're seeing communities impacted by the things that you grew up with, it's like you got to confront that, and before you can help anybody go forward with healing or do any kind of healing work, you got to confront your own traumas. And so that's really what also convinced me to keep doing this work, because I was like, I'm committed to healing from my own traumas, but I want to really do that so that I can help my communities and help other communities heal from their traumas and do the kind of work that does that.
Can you talk briefly about your year with AmeriCorps?
Yeah. That was a wild year. So, I was in AmeriCorps from 2018 to 2019. So the work that I did there with AmeriCorps, it was, with a nonprofit that was based at a charter school in St. Louis. Caseload of students that I was responsible for. And I was supposed to help them with accomplishing the requirements of a college access program called A+. And so the way it works, at least in Missouri, is A+, if you accomplish all the requirements, it allows for you to go to community college within the state for virtually free. And so that was my responsibility. Make sure that they graduated and make sure that they attained the requirements of A+. And that involved basically making sure that they attended class, because attendance, having a really good attendance was part of the requirements, but then they also needed to do at least 50 hours of mentoring or tutoring of younger students. So I had to train them in how to do that. And then we basically mentored and tutored students in literacy and math skills. So it was actually a lot of what I had done in CAPS, but just at a much elevated level.
For sure.
And so that was wild. I think I had said that earlier. And the reason for it is because the charter school where I was placed ended up getting shut down due to being audited. And it was discovered that basically the higher ups at that school were embezzling money because they had reported a higher number of students attending the school than what was actually happening. We had to help them with finding other schools to go to, and then also help them navigate having a sense of purpose, with this, because it's like their school just got shut down. Now they gotta not only find other schools, a lot of these families had to move out into new neighborhoods just so they can be eligible to go to other schools.
Wow.
Yeah, my experience with AmeriCorps was very pivotal for pushing me to really start being very critical of how education works in communities, especially when it comes to community organizations like AmeriCorps. And I think, to be clear, I think AmeriCorps does do a lot of good, but that has to be intentionally done. If you just go through AmeriCorps purely without having any sort of critical consciousness, I think it's very possible to just end up doing more harm.
Got you. Man, that's a hell of an experience. That's a hell of an experience, man. But I believe nothing happens by coincidence.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Everything is necessary. Everything is purposeful.
Absolutely.
Even
Absolutely.
as traumatic and as disheartening as it is,
Right, yeah.
this is continue to put a battery in your back
Mm-hmm.
to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So can we talk about some of the things you guys have going on in the CCE,
Yeah.
more specifically the Civic Engagement Scholars?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the Civic Engagement Scholars, the CESs, they are our main student leaders. It's a leadership position. But it's also a scholarly position, as is indicated by the name, and they're responsible for basically being the first point of contact when it comes to our programs. And so they usually their responsibility is to recruit from their fellow K students. People to be part of the programs, like Sasha did with me, to be part of CAPS. And then they're responsible for supervising and training those students, which we call participants.
Right.
So that you can be a paid or unpaid participant. The CES position, by the way, is a paid position. So some of our CESs work with campus partners who are usually faculty that do community civic engaged service learning courses. And so if a faculty member is doing a service learning course, then usually they work with the CCE and work with the CES to figure out the best way to do that course in a way that is ethical, in a way that is reciprocal, especially acknowledging and recognizing the relations of power that are inherent when you are an agent of the institution. And so we really do a lot of training with our CESs to unpack what that means, that even especially for our CESs that themselves come from historically marginalized or disadvantaged backgrounds, we do a lot of work to also help them understand. And now that they're an agent of the institution, they have power that they have to figure out how to leverage and to not use it towards harmful purposes when they go into these communities, the local communities, the communities in the Kalamazoo area. So yeah, it's a very involved position, and I think it's a really amazing opportunity to really start understanding what it means to, as you said, be a servant and to be a servant leader, to be a person that is liaising between the universities and the university's resources and these communities that have in a lot of ways historically and even currently been harmed by higher ed institutions. So yeah, it's a great opportunity.
When you think about the type of students that will assume this role as a CES, for prospective students that are listening and for current students that are listening, what are like some general characteristics of these students that you think they should possess or they already possess?
In terms of qualities, they absolutely have to have a position of humility.
For sure.
That is very key, and humility combined with I would say a sense of protectiveness. They have to really care and love the communities that we're working with. We don't want to perpetuate any sort of savior syndrome, and that can be harmful as well. So you got to really love the communities, but then you also have to have that position of humility to know that there's so much that you can learn from the communities that you're working with. That it's not just like you going in as an expert. So the really key thing is recognizing that you're not an expert.
It's collaborative.
Yeah, it's collaborative. It's reciprocal. It really is about having a partnership to best reach a mutual goal. Another key component of this is really being able to meet people where they are.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, you got to be able to meet people where they are.
I really appreciate the depth that you've gone into within the programs and the resource that the CCE is. But before we conclude, I always ask our guests, why K? So I put that question on your plate.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm happy to answer it. Oh man, yeah. K is such a great institution to be a small school that is having such a huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the K plan, especially as it engages with experiential learning
Mm-hmm.
and then having opportunities to connect with organizations like the CCE, um, these are opportunities that you're not going to find at too many other institutions. There are other institutions that are doing some of the work, but a lot of them are way bigger than K.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go there, then you're probably not going to get as personalized an experience,
Yeah.
especially an institutionally wide personalized experience. I think at a lot of the bigger schools, maybe you can get a personalized experience maybe within your major, maybe within a club, or extracurricular. But at K, this happens at every level. One of the things that kept me here at K is, I was thinking that I wanted to leave after my freshman year. I was just like, nah, I think I made a mistake. I probably should have just stayed in Missouri, went to some state school there. And, I was talking about that to some folks, and because K is so small, it made its way back up to the president of K at the time, President Wilson Oliarin, and she called me into her office because I was here at K. I was doing I was working with facilities management at the time, so I was but I was planning on like after this summer I'm leaving. But she called me into her office and she was like, "Hey, I'm hearing that it's tough for you, and just tell me your story." So I shared my story with her, and she was like, "Look, we need you here.
Mm-hmm.
Give him one more year.
Mm-hmm.
Give him one more year. I want to see you succeed here." And she continued to check in with me throughout my sophomore year, throughout the rest of my time here, all the way through my senior year. She continued to check in with me, and she wasn't the only one. There were other people, other faculty members that checked in that were personally invested in seeing me succeed. And I think that is a big part of what make K a great institution, is that you're going to have a personalized experience where that is going to make you grow. It's going to make you see the world differently and interact and engage with the world differently. That you're not going to just get a college experience. You're going to get an experience that is going to dramatically impact your socialization as an adult and as hopefully a servant leader.
Can we reel that right there, man, and send that to
Yeah.
to everybody in the world?
Yeah.
Because yes, Marquise, I thank you for your vulnerability. I thank you for your
absolutely.
transparency and your honesty. I think that's something that we can hang our hat on here at Kalamazoo College in the way that we communicate with each other and with those who may be interested in being a part of this campus community. And looking forward to working with you and all the opportunities that you have going on in the CCE. And that's the buzz.